Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever noticed that the places where you get hurt the most in life, whether we're talking emotionally, professionally, or personally, always seem to be the exact areas where you already care the absolute most? It's wild, right? Well, today we're unpacking a fascinating concept from our source material that argues this isn't just some unlucky coincidence. It's actually a fundamental law of nature. The core idea for this explainer is simple but profound. Our vulnerabilities, our absolute weakest points, dictate exactly where and how we get attacked. To really understand this, let's ground ourselves in a stark physical phenomenon. It's a bit morbid, I know, but you can't deny it. Scavengers, like crows and eagles, don't just randomly circle empty fields for the fun of it. They gather exactly and only where there's a corpse. The damage, or the attack, is magnetically drawn straight to the site of decay. This beautifully sets up a micro to macro journey for us, because this basic law of attraction applies to absolutely everything. Consider everyday physical realities for a second. A cracked egg becomes a magnet for flies. The part of the fruit that rots first, it's always the spot that was bruised or bitten by an insect. Where does a balloon burst? Where does a spring bend or a rope fray? Always at its weakest, most effective point. Think about it. If the egg were perfectly intact, the flies literally wouldn't care. If the fruit wasn't bruised, it would last way longer. The physical world shows us time and time again that damage seeks out the defect. And that brings us to the central philosophical thesis for this entire concept. It all comes down to this really powerful quote: "That which is easily hurt is weak and flawed." That's a bold statement, isn't it? It suggests that if something can be easily damaged, it inherently possesses a flaw. And as we're about to see, this rule doesn't just govern apples and springs. It governs us. Section 1. Exploiting human flaws. Let's transition from the physical world of bruised fruit over to the highly complex world of the human psyche. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the manipulator's playbook breaks down. Spies, gangsters, politicians, and schemers, they don't usually invent brand new ways to manipulate people. They just look for the cracks in the egg. It's a direct map of how schemers target specific desires to pull people down. If someone's flaw is lust, the tactic is seduction. If they have a crack in their armor when it comes to money, they're targeted with bribes. If they crave fame and vanity, the manipulator uses flattery. Hunger for power, they're promised high positions. The attacker doesn't create the weakness. They literally just pour water into the crack that's already there. Emotional triggers are essentially weaponized. History is absolutely full of figures who show us how specific personality types are tricked right into losing their rationality. Take a famously hot-headed warrior like Zhang Fei. Simple taunting acts as the trigger. For a highly courageous and proud figure like Guan Yu, showing contempt spurs him into reckless action. And for a self-satisfied perfectionist like Zhou Yu, just displaying superior skills infuriates him. Their very identities become their biggest vulnerabilities. Section 2. Historical Masters of Deflection. But what happens when you just refuse to show a weak point? Let's look at those who masterfully deflect these traps. Consider this epic historical game of emotional judo. During a fierce rivalry, the warlord Shang Yu actually captured the father of his enemy, Liu Bang. To force a surrender, Shang Yu threatened to literally cook Liu Bang's father alive. I mean, it's a horrific threat, perfectly designed to strike at the deepest familial vulnerability. But Liu Bang didn't panic. Instead, he calmly replied that if Shang Yu was going to cook his father, he should be sure to serve Liu Bang a bowl of the soup. By utterly refusing to show panic or attachment, Liu Bang completely neutralized the threat. The trap had absolutely nothing to snap shut on. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact same principle in another famous rivalry. The renowned strategist Zhuge Liang wanted to force his rival Sima Yi out of a fortified city. Knowing the deeply entrenched societal values of the time, Zhuge Liang sent Sima Yi a set of women's clothing, attempting to deeply insult his masculinity and provoke a reckless, angry charge. But Sima Yi foiled the strategy entirely. He didn't get angry. No way. He put the clothes on, cheerfully commented on how well they fit, and thanked the messenger. He completely refused to let the societal values of the time trigger his anger, rendering the insult completely useless. This state of mind is known as being unmoved. It means remaining entirely unaffected by external stimuli, whether we're talking about money, status, beauty, or even violent threats. The source material argues that if someone remains completely unaffected by these manipulative factors, they achieve a state of spiritual perfection. They become invulnerable, a state often compared to that of a perfect saint or a Buddha. Section 3. The Trap of Attachment. It's easy to look at historical generals, but let's shift the focus inward for a second. Our own internal attachments create our biggest blind spots. So I have to ask you, what do you need most and what do you fear most? Seriously, take a second and actually think about that. What are you most averse to? What do you love and hate the absolute most? Because whatever your answer is, that is exactly where you are most likely to be injured. Desperately wanting something makes you incredibly easy to exploit. For instance, if you desperately desire supernatural power or magic, you will inevitably fall prey to fake gurus. If you're urgently seeking religious paradise, you can be easily manipulated into delusion by folks who exploit faith. And if your defining trait is extreme patriotism, politicians can easily manipulate those feelings to send you out to the battlefield as cannon fodder. Your desire is literally the handle by which others steer you. But this goes even further. The source explores how deeply held, universally celebrated values can also become traps. Say you prioritize family above all else. Societal mechanisms can bind your mind to endless toil and duties, potentially costing you your individuality and freedom. Or if you demand absolute, perfect romantic love, well, that inevitably leads to jealousy, loss of rationality, and endless suffering. You end up tossing and turning in anguish because your happiness is entirely dependent on an unpredictable external factor. To explain the mechanics of this suffering, we can look to a traditional medical concept. When there is no obstruction, there is no pain. When there is obstruction, there is pain. In medicine, a blocked artery causes physical pain. But you know what? This applies perfectly to the mind and spirit as well. When our minds get stuck on an idea, an expectation, or an attachment, that mental obstruction is exactly what causes us so much emotional pain. So the crucial point is that clearing the mental obstruction removes the pain entirely. Imagine someone insults you by saying, "You are not even a thing." The mental obstruction, your ego, causes unbearable anger and pain. But if you simply step back and think it through rationally, you realize a human is inherently a person, not an inanimate thing. Therefore, the statement is just factually true in a literal sense. By logically thinking through the obstruction, the pain the insult causes immediately vanishes. We can apply this exact same logic as a philosophical remedy for heartbreak. If you face a romantic betrayal, it feels like a piece of your flesh has been cut out. But zoom out for a second. Realize that even massive mountains and rushing rivers eventually turn to dust. Human life is incredibly short, and human emotions are famously fleeting and unreliable. Getting deeply troubled by ever-changing emotions is like getting lost in an illusion within an illusion. Section 4. The power of nothingness. Having diagnosed the disease as our worldly attachments, let's look at the cure. The ultimate macro-level solution presented here is achieving true freedom through complete detachment. The core philosophy states, all phenomena are empty, neither arising nor ceasing, neither defiled nor pure, neither increasing nor decreasing. The idea is that worries and fears only exist because our hearts are so deeply attached to these empty, fleeting phenomena. If the heart has no attachments, there are no fears, no disputes, and critically, no easy-to-injure spots left to attack. Now, to actually achieve this requires shedding an immense amount of baggage. It's a dense, almost overwhelming list of no's. To be truly free, there must be no power, no money, no fame, no ego, no lust, no attachment to country or religion, no binding ties to family or property, no greed, and finally, no rigid rules. As you shed each one of these, you become lighter, you become less and less of a target. Let's move on and see how this builds to our final conclusion. The ultimate goal here is that by systematically shedding all these attachments, we approach perfection. We become so rich internally and so fundamentally unattached externally that nothing outside of us has the power to harm us anymore. It's essentially the end of the human journey, transitioning into a true kingdom of freedom. Which leaves us with this final lingering thought. Life is just a temporary journey. What is destined to come will come, and what is destined to go will go. When you can let go completely at any time, where can you be injured? It's a really powerful question to reflect on. If you hold on to nothing, there is simply nothing for anyone to use against you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it gives you a fascinating new lens through which to view your own vulnerabilities.